All right, so this is where we are starting up with lecture number 4 here, that is Prezi writing, right? So before we start with our lecture number 4, this is where the last writing skill, which was remaining. So we are now going to continue with it and then the lecture number 4. So let's start with the Prezi. First of all, what is a Prezi writing? So a Prezi writing means summary writing, right? You write down the summary, you shorten it, right? Explaining the same story in the shortest possible way, isn't it? Yes, exactly. Huh? So moving on, let's take a look at uh, how exactly we can make the entire Prezi interesting, right? Here we go. So first of all, you will have to read the paragraph, the main paragraph very much carefully, right? Unless and until you get a hang of the entire story, you won't be able to create a proper Prezi or summary of the story, right? Then, once you're done creating a Prezi writing, once you're done creating, thinking about the story, reading the story and absorbing the story well, then you can start underlining or marking or writing the important pointers in the rough column, right? Either you can underline it or you can write it on a rough column, but the most preferable is writing it on the answer sheet in a rough column, right? Since marking anything on the question paper might cost you. Moving on, once done underlining the pointers, create a basic outline. Arrange all the pointers in a chronology that how exactly you can write the story based on the pointers, so that the story does not lose its chronology, right? I repeat, I don't want you to lose the chronology or the link of the story. Just because you have to create a summary doesn't mean you cut short, you skip any part of it. You have to cover up the story in such a way that even by reading the summary, the reader get the entire idea about the actual story. Best example for summary writing was back in 9th standard, we had this synopsis, the Swiss Family Robinson. The entire story was not given to you. It was a synopsis, it was a summary. Yet, when you read that synopsis, you get the feeling of the story, the actual story, right? That's because they haven't cut short anything in that. They have connected each and everything in such a way so that the reader doesn't get an idea that what we have skipped. All right. Now you don't need to, add on each and everything of it. Pick out the majority of the adjectives, the adverbs, the describing words which are given over there, which are in detail. You can skip that and then create a sentence of your own. Okay. So in short, in this particular format, after reading a paragraph, you have to first write down the pointers, then think about an outline, and then start writing in such a way that you have to connect each and everything. So these are the rules for Prezi writing. Moving on with what else you can add in the story, or what are the other tips that you can make use of. So first of all, here we go with what not to omit. While writing a Prezi, the writer should never omit the important points and ideas which are essential to be described. Let's say there were, let's say Aditya bought 5 different types of cars named Audi, Mercedes, Maruti, and so on, etc., etc., etc. Right? So in this particular part, now I am describing something like the different types of cars. So you can say Aditya purchased 5 different cars or 5 different expensive cars. That's it. So I have not skipped the important pointer, yet I have included the description of what exactly had happened. Moving on, whenever you write the Pressy writing, write it in indirect speech. Indirect speech, right? I hope everybody is aware of what is indirect speech. Yes, it is the second person speaking to the third. Moving on with the next pointer that we are going to discuss is that how you can create in the entire Pressy in your own words. You simply have to pick up the pointers and you have to write it in your own words, right? Now, this is the last pointer is the rarest possibility, but in my opinion, the state board doesn't give you all these things. That is, a dialogue would be given to you and you are supposed to create a Pressy of it. Now that is also another part of it, but you won't get it, right? So you won't have the dialogue to Pressy in the examination. Simply you will have a paragraph and you will have to convert it into Pressy. I hope this part is clear to everybody. And now here I am going on with the next part of it. So we are starting up again with revision lecture 4, that is simple, compound, complex, and clauses. Let's have a quick recap about verbs. Verbs are of two types, finite verbs and non-finite verbs, right? Finite verbs have the this golden rule, right? Subject hai ya mumkin hai. And on the other hand, we say non-finite verb says subject मुश्किल ही नहीं, नामुमकिन है, right? So if I give you the statement, after she ate the bhel, Bhavna fainted. So in this case, ate is the finite verb. Why? Because we have a subject she before it. Apart from that, we also have another verb that is fainted, which is a finite verb. Why? Because before that we have a subject that is Bhavna. So subject यहाँ पर है. But take a look in the second statement. Bhavna ate the bhel and fainted. No doubt, ate is the finite verb because Bhavna is the subject which is given for it. But in this case, even fainted is a finite verb. The reason is, although यहाँ पर subject नहीं है, but यहाँ पर subject मुमकिन है. That means possible है. So if we imagine Bhavna ate the bhel and she fainted, do you agree that this is a valid statement? Yes, isn't it? Bhavna ate the bhel and she fainted. So this is the one which is again a valid statement. So although the subject is not given here before the word fainted, it is possible. Hence we say subject hai ya mumkin hai. Take a look on the other side. That is, after eating the bhel, Bhavna fainted. Eating is the verb, fainted is the verb. But in this case, eating does not have any finite verb, any subject before the verb. That is, we do not have any subject before the verb. After is not a subject. It is a conjunction, isn't it? So here in this case, can we say after she eating the bhel, Bhavna fainted? This is completely illogical. Hence, we say eating is a non-finite verb. While on the other hand, only fainted here is a finite verb. Moving on with the next one, here we have another set of revision of conjunctions, that is coordinators and the subordinators. So I hope everybody remembers these are the sets of conjunctions, right? Don't forget the color scheme. Blue of subordinator matches with blue of coordinator. Yellow of subordinator goes well with yellow of coordinators. White of subordinator goes with white of coordinator, and orange of subordinator goes with orange of coordinator. So this is how the concept of changing the conjunctions while changing the sentence works, right? But in this case, we are going one step further. And that's why we are going to talk about simple compound complex. And that's why here, what are subordinators? So what are, how does a complex, simple and compound sentence work? So here we go. If we use two finite verbs plus a subordinator, it will make it complex. So if any sentence which has two finite verbs plus a subordinating conjunction, it will make the sentence a complex sentence. For example, we knew that MI would win. Now in this case, knew and would are the finite verbs. Now we have learned what is a finite verb. Subject plus verb, subject plus verb. Subject है या मुमकिन है. Knew has a subject, that is we. Would has a subject, that is MI. And that's why knew and would become the two finite verbs. But wait, these two finite verbs are connected with a subordinating conjunction. Now we all know which is that subordinating conjunction. And that is that, exactly. That is the subordinating conjunction. Hence, it is known as a complex sentence. So on the other hand, if in any sentence, if we have two finite verbs which are connected by any coordinator, then it will be known as a compound sentence, right? So here is a list of all the compound words that we have. So if you club it with two finite verbs, it will become a compound sentence. For example, in this sentence, MI would win and we knew it, we have would and knew. Again, the same two finite verbs. MI is the subject for would and we is the subject for knew. Hence, they are two finite verbs. But this time, these two finite verbs are connected by a coordinator. Now, which is the coordinator? Easy, it is and, right? So and is the coordinator which has connected the two finite verbs. That's why it is a compound sentence. In the previous statement, the same two finite verbs were connected by that, which was a subordinator. Hence, it was a complex sentence. Now it is changed by a coordinator, that is and that's why it became a compound sentence. On the other hand, when it comes to a simple sentence, in a simple sentence, we only have one finite verb. Instead of two finite verbs, we only have one finite verb. And this time we have prepositional phrases which are going to be added into that. And apart from that, there are also different parts of speech that we can use. Okay, but before that, here we have, let's get on to the sentence. We knew about MI's victory. Now in this case, knew is the only finite verb. Why? Because we is the subject. But we do not have any other finite verb which has a subject. So this time I have made use of one of these. So these are the prepositional phrases plus the combinations that we can use. That is the noun. So this time I have made use of the noun, that is victory or win. Whose victory? MI's victory. Okay, so this time I have taken the help of the noun to complete this statement. So this is how we frame a simple statement. Now, this was a practice sheet, right? This is a practice sheet so that you can prepare yourself when it comes to the sentences. For example, change the following sentences as instructed in the brackets. The girl looked at her brother and smiled. Now, when it comes to rewriting the following as a simple statement, we know how many finite verbs are we going to add? Only one. Exactly. So which are the two finite verbs here? The girl looked at her brother and smiled. Which are the two finite verbs that we have? Exactly. We have looked and smiled. We have looked and smiled. Subject hai ya mumkin hai. In the word looked, the girl is the subject which is given. Subject hai. But with the verb smiled, it is mumkin. It is possible. That means the girl looked at her brother and she smiled. So we can imagine the subject she before the word smiled. That's why smiled is also a finite verb. So these are the two finite verbs. But wait, here the question says we are supposed to convert this into the simple sentence. So in this manner, you have to practice these sentences whenever it comes to practicing the simple compound complex. Okay, so it's time we continue with the next thing, that the steps to separate the main clause and the subordinate clause. In the question of clauses, how to separate a main clause and a subordinate clause if a sentence is given to you. So the first step is that you have to figure out the two finite verbs and then open the bracket at the subordinator. That means wherever the subordinating conjunction starts, you have to draw an open bracket and then close it before the second verb. If the second verb is not given, you can simply close it at the end of the sentence, right? So simply you have to open the bracket before the subordinating conjunction and close it in the end. Sometimes there are questions where the subordinate clause is given in the middle of the sentence. In this case, you can start the bracket at the subordinator and then close the bracket before the second verb starts. Moving on. If present, what we have to do? As I said, close the bracket at the end. And if absent, close the bracket before the second verb. So I hope this part is clear to everybody. Now I am moving on with the next part. Now, take a look at the statement. Behram knows where Deepa lives. Now, in this case, what am I going to do? I'm going to start open the bracket from the subordinating conjunction, that is where, and close it at the end of the sentence, that is lives. Hence, I find my very good. Hence, I find my subordinating clause. Okay, and the remaining part, that is Behram knows, becomes my main clause. Now, how to find out whether it is a noun clause, adjective clause, or adverb clause? So, you are supposed to ask question to the main clause. Once again, I repeat, you are supposed to ask questions to the main clause so that we get the subordinate clause as an answer. For example, Behram knows. Behram knows what? Where Deepa lives. So don't you think we are getting the answer for the question what? Whenever we ask the question to the main clause, that is Behram knows. Yes. So what does Behram know? Where Deepa lives. So we are getting the subordinate clause as an answer for the question what? That's why we consider the subordinate clause as the noun clause. That's why whenever we write the answer, we write Behram knows main clause, where Deepa lives, subordinate noun clause. Check the second sentence. Behram knows the building where Deepa lives. In this case, we have highlighted the subordinate clause, that is where Deepa lives. The rule again, open the bracket at the subordinate clause and close it at the end. And that's how we got where Deepa lives as subordinate clause. Now, the remaining part becomes your main clause, that is Behram knows the building. But in this case, we are not going to ask the question what. Rather, we are going to ask question which. Why? Because in this case, we are going to ask a question which to either the subject or the object. That is either to Behram or to the building. So the question in which we are, the pattern in which we are supposed to ask the question is, Behram knows which building? Only then we get an answer as where Deepa lives. So because we are getting answer for the question which here, it is a subordinate adjective clause. Moving on with the next one. Behram goes where Deepa lives. Now in this case, once again, I have highlighted the subordinate clause, that is open the bracket at the subordinating clause and close the bracket at the end. That's how we get where Deepa lives, and the remaining part, that is Behram goes, is the main clause. You are supposed to ask a question now, that is where. But wait, I am not asking question where because I have where as a where conjunction in the list. I am asking because none of the questions are working here. And that's how whenever we ask, where does Behram go? Or Behram goes where? Only then we get an answer as where Deepa lives. And that's how we get the answer for as subordinating adverb clause of place. Because we all know the question where answers the adverb clause of place. Moving on with, yes. Ajay reached after Kajal had left. So here is our next statement. Now in this case, which is the conjunction, which is the subordinating conjunction here? It is after, exactly. The subordinating conjunction is after, which is a time word. Very good. So in this case, what I have done in order to mark the subordinate clause, I have highlighted the word after. I have opened the bracket before the word after and closed the bracket after left. That is at the end. So that's how we get altogether a subordinating clause. Now it's time to find out whether which type of subordinate clause is it. So we know the step. Let's ask question to the main clause and get the subordinate clause as an answer. Let's ask all the questions now. Ajay reached what? Do we get an answer as after Kajal had left? No. When we ask Ajay reached which Ajay reached? Is this the right way to ask question? No, we are not getting the answer as after Kajal had left. When I ask Ajay reached where? After Kajal had left? No, it is not displaying any place. Then we come down to the question when, that is, when did Ajay reach, or Ajay reached when? As soon as Kajal had left, after Kajal had left, when Kajal had left. See, these are the types of conjunctions that can be added. and they all answer the question when. So it doesn't really matter whether which type of conjunction that we use. The main step is to ask the question and get the answer. And that's how we get subordinate adverb clause of time. Here we go with another statement, that is, Kamlesh acts as if he is a star. Why not? Here we go. Now we know which is a conjunction. As if is a conjunction which comes in the what column, that is A, in which we have as if, and if. So in this column, we have as if, which is a conjunction. So we have marked our subordinating clause and then we have our main clause. So now it's time to ask again the question, that is, Kamlesh acts as if he is a star. So how does Kamlesh act? In which manner is he acting? He's acting as if he's some star. He's some celebrity, isn't it? So I hope this part is clear to everybody, that how Kamlesh is acting is showing us the manner, right? And the manner is of some star. That's how the how question gets answered, and we get the answer as subordinating adverb clause of manner. So how are you supposed to write the answer? Kamlesh acts, main clause, as if he is a star, subordinate adverb clause of manner. In examination, you're not supposed to write the shortcuts, the acronyms, the clippings like adverb, ADV, and CL. You are supposed to write the whole word, that is ADVERB, adverb, CLAUSE, clause of manner. So you're supposed to use the whole term. Here we go with another question, that is, Swapnil was happy because his students fared well. So once again, we have highlighted the subordinate clause using the conjunction, that is because his students fared well is a subordinate clause. And now it's time to ask question to the main clause. Swapnil was happy. Why was Swapnil happy? Because his students fared well. Now, whenever we answer the question why, we get the answer as subordinate adverb clause of reason. In the examination, you are supposed to write down the types of adverb clause, but you don't need to write the conjunction. You simply need to write which is the main clause and which is the subordinate clause. But when you write the subordinate clause, do not forget to include the conjunction in it. For example, Swapnil was happy, main clause, because his students fared well, subordinate adverb clause of reason. I have included the word because in the answer. What if the questions never get answered? Then in such a case, what are you going to do? So in that case, here we have, you simply need to focus on the table which is given to you, that is on the subordinate clause. And in the subordinate clause table, you already have the words which are purpose, result, condition, contrast, comparison, isn't it? So these are the words which are already given to you. So we are now going to check this, that if all these questions do not get answered, what are we supposed to do? So let's go. The first two steps are same. That is highlighting the subordinate clause and trying to ask the question to the main clause. But if they don't work, then the answer will be clear. So here we go. Brad studied hard so that he may impress Angie. I'm so sorry. Brad studied hard so that he may impress Angie. Now, in this case, tell me, we know we have highlighted the subordinate clause. So aren't we supposed to ask the question what, when, where, how, which to the main clause and try? Yes, we are going to try that. But if they don't work, then we have to focus on the conjunction. Now, in this case, which is the conjunction that is used? Yes, it is so that. So that is the conjunction which is used. So in that case, we should find out, we should know that so that comes into the column of result and purpose. So in this case, we have adverb clause of purpose. But in that case, if I change, Brad studied so hard that Angie was impressed. So in this case, using the same conjunction, I have made a slight difference. I've made a slight change in it. Now, what is that? In between the word so and that, I have added an adjective, an addition, an additional word which is added here, right? And only because of that, a gap is created between so and that. So in short, what I want to prove here is that whenever we have a gap in between so and that, it is a result. And if we don't have the gap between so and that, it is a purpose. So in that case, now it becomes subordinate adverb clause of result, right? So moving on with the next one. Yes, so you see both the concepts use the same conjunctions. So here we go with next. Although Vishal studied hard, Pooja was not impressed. He had to work really hard, isn't it? Here we know although is the conjunction. Now, we don't need to ask the question here. Why? Because although is a part of though family, which is a part of contrast or concession. So in this case, we can simply, without asking the question, we can simply answer as subordinate adverb clause of concession. Moving on with the next one. She runs faster than Behram does. My goodness, don't you think we have a comparison? A comparative degree is used here, faster than. Yes, although than is working as a conjunction here, but we are comparing the girl with Behram, isn't it? So in this case, we are going to highlight the conjunction. That is what we have done here. That is than Behram does is a subordinate clause. But which subordinate clause does it, which role does it play here? So it is playing the role of comparing two things. Hence, it is subordinate adverb clause of comparison. So these are few comparisons which you can use when it comes to adverb clause of comparison. That is than, more than, less than, as and as, so as. Here we go with the last one, that is Prachi will not attend if Behram is the teacher. Prachi hates Behram, isn't it? Prachi will not attend if Behram is the teacher. So in this case, we know if is the conjunction which is used here, which is a subordinator. We know the answer. It is adverb clause of condition. Isn't it easy? What if we have a better way to remember all these things, right? So this was the pre-work which we are supposed to, which we had given to you. And if not, take a screenshot, everybody,